Chapter 1. The Foundation of Meaningful Productivity. Have you ever reached the end of an exhausting, grueling day, collapsed onto your bed, stared up at the ceiling, and realized that despite running at top speed since the moment you woke up, you accomplished absolutely nothing of actual value? You answered 100 emails. You attended half a dozen meetings. You checked off 20 minor errands. You were in constant, frantic motion. Yet the deep, meaningful work that actually moves your life forward remained entirely untouched. You are left with a lingering, heavy sense of emptiness, a feeling that you are sprinting on a treadmill, sweating and exhausted, but staying in the exact same place. If this sounds deeply familiar, you are not failing. You are simply operating under a completely broken, outdated definition of what it means to be productive. We have inherited a deeply flawed blueprint for human effort. A century ago, the concept of productivity was born in the dust and noise of the Industrial Revolution. It was simple, cold math. If you stood at a factory conveyor belt and assembled 50 mechanical parts in an hour, you were productive. If you pushed yourself harder, sacrificed your brakes, and assembled 70 parts in that same hour, you were highly productive. The equation was entirely based on volume and speed. More output in less time equaled success. We were taught to view human beings as machines, and productivity as the rate at which those machines could churn out physical goods. But you are not a machine, and you no longer work on an assembly line. The work you do today, the life you are trying to build, does not happen purely with your hands. It happens in your mind. You are navigating complex relationships, solving abstract problems, raising families, building careers, and trying to carve out a meaningful existence in a world that never stops screaming for your attention. Yet, tragically, we still judge our daily worth by factory standards. We try to cram more tasks, more obligations, and more noise into fewer hours. We treat our minds like conveyor belts, believing that if we just clear our inbox faster, if we just sleep a little less, if we just hustle a little harder, we will finally cross an imaginary finish line and find peace. That finish line does not exist. To step off this exhausting treadmill, we must completely shatter the old definition of productivity and rebuild it from the ground up. True productivity has absolutely nothing to do with how much you do. It has everything to do with what you achieve. It is not about crossing 100 trivial items off a checklist to feel a fleeting rush of dopamine. It is the deliberate, quiet power of achieving exactly what you set out to achieve. Imagine a deeply ambitious professional, perhaps someone very much like you. Let us say they want to write a novel, or start a new business, or perhaps just spend truly present, joyful time with their children. They wake up with this noble intention, but the moment their eyes open, they reach for their phone. A notification pulls them into a work emergency. An hour is lost, scrolling through social media, absorbing the anxieties of thousands of strangers. They rush to their desk, already feeling behind, and spend the next 8 hours reacting to whatever flashes on their screen. They put out fires, they sort digital paper. By the time evening arrives, their mental reservoir is entirely drained. They look at their novel, or their business plan, or their family, and they have nothing left to give. They say, "I do not have the time." But time was never the issue. They had the same 24 hours as anyone else. What they lacked was the synchronized management of the 3 true currencies of modern human effort: time, attention, and energy. These 3 elements are the holy trinity of a meaningful life. In the modern world, managing your time without managing your energy and attention is entirely useless. Think about it carefully. You can block out 4 perfectly uninterrupted hours on your calendar to work on your most important life goal. You have managed your time beautifully. But if you have slept poorly for a week, eaten terribly, and are running on nothing but caffeine and anxiety, your energy is completely depleted. You will sit at your desk, staring blankly at the wall, struggling to string 2 thoughts together. Time without energy yields nothing. Conversely, imagine you have both time and abundant energy. You wake up refreshed, you sit down in your blocked-out schedule, and you're ready to conquer the world. But your phone buzzes. You glance at it. You open a browser tab to check the news. You remember an item you need to buy online. Suddenly, 2 hours have evaporated into the digital ether. You had the time, you had the physical energy, but your attention was fractured into 1,000 useless pieces. Time and energy without focused attention simply results in enthusiastic distraction. To be truly productive, to actually build a life of substance, you must learn to fiercely protect and perfectly align all three. But even this is not the final step. There is a deeper foundation that must be laid before you ever attempt to manage your schedule or hone your focus. You must confront the terrifying, beautiful question of why. Productivity without a profound personal why is just a highly efficient way of running in the completely wrong direction. If you learn to master your time, energy, and attention, you will become incredibly effective. But if you are using that effectiveness to climb a ladder that is leaning against the wrong wall, your efficiency will only lead you to regret much faster. Before you try to optimize your life, you have to anchor it. You have to look deeply into your own values and ask yourself what actually matters. Why do you want to be productive in the first place? Is it to impress people you do not even like? Is it to blindly accumulate wealth at the expense of your health? Or is it to free up your days so you can dedicate yourself to the craft you love? Is it to leave work at the office so you can sit on the floor and build blocks with your child without checking your phone? Is it to create a legacy of kindness, innovation, or art? When you anchor your daily actions to deep, unshakable personal values, productivity stops being a chore. It stops being a weapon you use to punish yourself for not doing enough. It transforms into a vehicle for human freedom. The trivial tasks naturally fall away because you suddenly realize they do not serve your ultimate vision. The difficult, grueling tasks become bearable, even joyful, because you understand exactly why you are doing them. You are about to embark on a journey to reclaim your life. You are going to learn how to step away from the noise, how to stop reacting to the world, and how to start designing your days with quiet, relentless intention. It begins here, today, with a simple promise to yourself. You will no longer measure your worth by your exhaustion. You will measure it by your intention. You are not here to do more. You are here to do what matters. Chapter 2, Prioritization and the Rule of 3. Bring to mind, right now, your current to-do list. Whether it is written in a beautiful leather-bound notebook, typed out on a digital app, or simply swirling around in your head as a cloud of anxiety, take a moment to really look at it. It is likely a towering, intimidating monument to your own stress. It is a relentless, ever-growing catalogue of obligations, ranging from the profoundly important to the incredibly mundane. We have been conditioned to look at a list like that and feel an overwhelming surge of panic, followed immediately by a frantic urge to start crossing things off. We have been taught that the best way to conquer the mountain is to start hacking away at the base. So what do? We attack the easy items first. We pay a bill, we send a quick email, we organize our computer desktop, we load the dishwasher. We hunt down those tiny, insignificant tasks, because every time we draw a line through one of them, our brain delivers a tiny, intoxicating rush of dopamine. We mistake that chemical rush for actual progress. But here is the dangerous, quiet truth that keeps so many brilliant, capable people running in circles. A to-do list is a terrible liar. A traditional to-do list is entirely democratic. It gives the exact same visual weight, the exact same amount of ink, to an item that says, buy replacement ink cartridges, as it does to an item that says, draft the business proposal that will change the trajectory of my career. It presents a flat landscape where everything seems equally urgent. But reality is not flat, and tasks are not created equal. In fact, the disparity between the value of different tasks is staggering. Consider a deeply ambitious person. Let us imagine a talented designer who dreams of launching her own independent creative agency. She has a full-time job, but she fiercely protects her weekends to build her dream. She wakes up early on a Saturday morning, armed with a massive cup of coffee and a burning desire to make things happen. But instead of sitting down to pitch potential clients or build her portfolio, the terrifying, difficult work that will actually launch her business, she looks around her apartment. She decides she cannot work in a messy environment. So she spends 2 hours deep cleaning her kitchen. Then she decides she needs to organize her digital files emails, color-coding her folders with meticulous precision. After that, she spends 3 hours endlessly tweaking the font on her personal business cards, a task she has already done 5 times before. By 6 o'clock in the evening, she is physically and mentally exhausted. If you asked her, she would tell you honestly that she worked relentlessly all day. She never turned on the television, she never took a nap, she hustled. Yet, as the sun goes down, a quiet, sickening feeling of emptiness settles in her stomach. Why? Because deep down, her soul knows the truth. She engaged in the ultimate form of self-sabotage, productive procrastination. She chose to do 20 comfortable, low-value tasks rather than the one uncomfortable, high-value task that actually mattered. She mistook motion for momentum. This happens to all of us because we refuse to acknowledge that a tiny fraction of our daily actions produces almost all of our meaningful results. Most of the things we do in a day are simply maintenance. They are the background noise of life. They must be done eventually, but they will never define who we are or where we are going. To break free from this exhausting cycle, you must become ruthlessly discerning. You must look at the chaotic landscape of your responsibilities and separate the vital few from the trivial many. You have to stop asking what needs to be done today and start asking a much more dangerous, powerful question. If I could only accomplish absolutely one thing today before the day ends, what would leave me feeling the most deeply satisfied? When you force yourself to answer that question, the trivial noise instantly fades away. You suddenly realize that organizing your email inbox will not bring you joy on your deathbed. You realize that responding to a non-urgent message can wait. You locate the heavy, meaningful, often intimidating task that is actually carrying the weight of your future. But human ambition is complex, and focusing on just one single thing every day is rarely practical for a fully lived life. We have families, we have jobs, we have personal health to maintain. This is where we must bridge the gap between profound philosophy and daily execution. You need a method to filter the chaos that is powerful enough to keep you focused, but flexible enough to reflect reality. The human brain is a magnificent engine, but its working memory is surprisingly limited. If you try to hold 20 priorities in your head, you have no priorities at all. You only have panic. But the mind loves the elegance and the boundaries of the number 3. 3 is large enough to capture the complexity of a day. Perhaps one major work goal, one personal health goal, and one relationship goal, but small enough that you can hold it firmly in your mind without writing it down. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning. Before you touch your phone, before you let the demands of the world flood your mind, you sit down with a blank piece of paper. You imagine that it is already late in the evening. The day is over. You are sitting in your favorite chair, winding down. You ask yourself, looking back at today, what 3 things did I accomplish that make me feel proud, at peace, and highly effective? You write those 3 things down, nothing more. Those 3 intentions become your absolute true north for the day. They are not a rigid prison. They are a protective shield. Throughout the day, the world will inevitably throw chaos at you. Crises will flare up. People will demand your attention. You will still have to do minor chores. But because you have deeply internalized those 3 vital tasks, you have a compass. When you find yourself drifting into an hour of mindless web browsing or getting sucked into a dramatic, unimportant email chain, you can pause, remember your 3 intentions, and gently steer your ship back on course. This is the profound difference between living a reactive life and an intentional life. The reactive person wakes up and lets the world dictate what is important, frantically swatting away whatever flies into their face. They are a victim of circumstance. The intentional person wakes up and decides, before the battle even begins, exactly what victory will look like. By accepting that tasks are unequal and by deliberately choosing the vital few over the trivial many, you stop drowning in the shallow waters of busyness. You step into the deep, quiet currents of real achievement. You take the pen back from the world and you begin to write the story of your own day. Chapter 3. the energy-centric workday. The clock on the wall is a relentless dictator. From the moment we enter the school system as children to the day we retire from the workforce, we are conditioned to worship at the altar of the hour. We are taught to measure our worth, our dedication, and our productivity by how much time we spend sitting at a desk. If you work an 8-hour day, you are a good employee. If you stay late and work a 12-hour day, you are a dedicated superstar. We trade our time for money, we track our hours, and we constantly complain that we simply do not have enough time in the day to accomplish everything we want. But this obsession with the clock is built on a fundamental, exhausting illusion. It assumes that every single hour of your day holds the exact same potential. To understand why this is a trap, consider a familiar, deeply frustrating scenario. Imagine a highly ambitious professional who needs to write a critical, career-defining proposal. They know this task requires intense creative focus, so they do what every traditional time management guru tells them to do. They block out a massive chunk of time. They carve out 4 uninterrupted hours on a Friday afternoon from 2 o'clock until 6 o'clock. They turn off their phone, close their office door, and sit down at their computer, fully expecting to produce brilliant work. But what actually happens? The reality is agonizing. They stare at the blank white screen, watching the cursor blink rhythmically, taunting them. Their eyes feel heavy. Their brain feels like it is wading through thick molasses. They write a single sentence, stare at it with disgust, and immediately delete it. To escape the discomfort, they open a new tab and start reading the news. They convince themselves they need to check their email, just in case a true emergency has arisen. They get up to make a 3rd cup of coffee. 3 hours pass in this miserable, semi-conscious state of productive procrastination. When 6 o'clock finally arrives, they have written perhaps 2 mediocre paragraphs. They are angry, demoralized, and convinced that they lack discipline. They had 4 perfect hours. Why couldn't they just do the work? Now, imagine that same person taking that exact same project, but approaching it on a random Tuesday morning. They have had a deep, restful night of sleep. They have eaten well, the morning air is crisp, and their mind is clear and quiet. They sit down at 9 o'clock, open the document, and the words simply pour out of them. Connections are made instantly. Complex problems unravel with ease. In just 45 minutes, they draft the entire proposal, and the quality is exceptional. The lesson here is earth-shattering for the modern worker. Time is completely irrelevant if you do not have the energy to use it. We are living in an era where we stubbornly try to apply factory-era metrics to knowledge-era work. In a factory, time is everything. A machine operating at a constant speed will stamp out the exact same number of metal parts at 8 in the morning as it will at 4 in the afternoon. A machine does not experience a post-lunch slump. A machine does not feel creative burnout. But you are a living, breathing human being. Your capacity to do deep, meaningful cognitive work fluctuates wildly throughout the day based on a complex symphony of hormones, blood sugar, circadian rhythms, and emotional states. An hour spent working when your biological battery is fully charged is worth 5 hours spent working when your battery is completely drained. To step into the highest tier of true productivity, you must stop managing your time and start fiercely managing your energy. You have to abandon the guilt of not working continuously for 8 hours and instead embrace the beautiful reality of your own biology. Every single person possesses a natural rhythm, a specific window in their day when their focus is sharpest, their motivation is highest, and their cognitive processing is at its absolute peak. This is your biological prime time. For some people, this is the quiet, pre-dawn hours before the rest of the world wakes up. For others, it is late at night, when the day's distractions have faded into silence. For many, it is a 2-hour window in the mid-morning, followed by another brief spike in the late afternoon. Discovering this prime time is not about taking a personality quiz. It is an act of deep, quiet observation. It requires stripping away the artificial stimulants, the excessive caffeine, and the sugar rushes that mask your natural state, and simply paying attention to your body over the course of a few weeks. When do you naturally feel the urge to tackle difficult things? When do you find yourself staring blankly at the wall? Once you identify these golden hours, you must protect them with your life. This is the moment where the profound truth of the previous chapter comes into play. Your vital few, those deeply important, terrifying, needle-moving tasks you identified for your day, must be mapped directly onto your biological prime time. If your peak energy is at 10 in the morning, it is a complete tragedy to spend that hour organizing your inbox, attending a status update meeting, or running errands. You are taking your most valuable currency and burning it on the cheapest possible goods. Equally important is learning to honor your valleys. There will inevitably be hours in your day when your energy plummets. Society tells us to drink another energy drink, slap ourselves in the face, and power through the fatigue. This is a foolish, counterproductive battle against nature. Instead of fighting the valley, use it strategically. When your brain is tired, that is the exact time to execute the low-energy maintenance tasks of life. Do your laundry, reply to routine emails, clean your workspace, organize your files. You do not need peak cognitive function to sweep a floor or pay a water bill. When you align your most difficult work with your highest energy and your easiest work with your lowest energy, the friction of life completely disappears. You stop feeling like you are constantly pushing a boulder up a hill. You get more done in a beautifully focused 90-minute window than most people accomplish in an exhausting 12-hour day. You cannot manufacture more time. There will always be only 24 hours in a day, no matter how much money you make or how successful you become. But energy is beautifully elastic. It can be expanded, renewed, and strategically deployed. When you master your energy, you reclaim your life from the tyranny of the clock. Yet, even with abundant energy and perfectly protected time, you will inevitably face moments where you sit down to do your most important work, and an invisible, powerful force physically pushes you away from the desk. You know what you need to do, you have the energy to do it, and still you refuse. To master productivity, we must look into the dark, irrational human psychology of why we run away from the things that matter most. Chapter 4, The Psychology of Procrastination. There is a deeply universal, profoundly frustrating experience that happens to nearly every human being who tries to accomplish something meaningful. You block out the perfect window of time on your calendar. You ensure you are well rested and vibrating with high energy. You sit down at your desk, the room is quiet, the stage is perfectly set, and you look at the incredibly important task in front of you. And then an invisible magnetic force seems to physically push you away from your work. Your chest tightens, your mind scrambles for an escape route. Suddenly, you feel an overwhelming urgent need to clean the baseboards of your hallway, or reorganize your bookshelf by color, or check the weather in a city you do not even live in. You know exactly what you need to do, you know how important it is, and yet you completely refuse to do it. When this happens, the immediate reaction is almost always brutal self-criticism. We call ourselves lazy. We call ourselves undisciplined. We look in the mirror and declare that we simply lack the willpower to succeed. But this is a tragic misunderstanding of human psychology. Laziness is the act of doing nothing and feeling perfectly content with it. Procrastination is the act of doing nothing and being absolutely tormented by the fact that you are doing nothing. You are not lazy. You are experiencing a profound failure of emotional regulation. We do not procrastinate because we are bad at managing our time. We procrastinate because we are actively trying to manage our emotions. To understand this, we must look at the anatomy of the tasks we avoid. We do not procrastinate on things that are inherently joyful, effortless, or deeply rewarding. We run away from tasks that carry a heavy, invisible, emotional weight. Human beings are biologically hardwired to pull their hands away from a hot stove to avoid physical pain. In the exact same way, our brains are hardwired to pull away from tasks that cause us psychological discomfort. When a piece of work is deeply ambiguous and lacks clear instructions, it makes us feel stupid. When a project is highly unstructured, it makes us feel lost and out of control. When a duty is intensely difficult or frustrating, it triggers feelings of inadequacy. And when something is just agonizingly boring or entirely devoid of personal meaning, it feels like a slow, painful drain on our life force. Imagine someone who has finally decided to confront a decade of messy, ignored finances. They have big dreams. They want to buy a home, they want to start a family, they want to be free from the suffocating anxiety of debt. They sit down on a Sunday afternoon to map out a budget and look at all their accounts. But the moment they open the spreadsheet, a wave of profound discomfort hits them. The task is ambiguous because they do not know anything about accounting. It is unstructured because there is no boss telling them exactly what to do. It is difficult, it is deeply frustrating, and it carries the sharp emotional sting of past mistakes. It is an incredibly ugly, painful task, so their brain sounds an alarm. It demands an immediate escape from this psychological pain. The person looks away from the terrifying spreadsheet and notices that their kitchen counter is cluttered. Cleaning the kitchen is the exact opposite of the financial spreadsheet. It is highly structured. It is simple. The rules are clear, and the visual reward is immediate. So they abandon their financial future to wipe down countertops, instantly soothing their anxiety with the comfortable illusion of productivity. They have successfully medicated their negative emotions, but they have completely sabotaged their actual life. But there is a second, even more fascinating psychological trap that locks us into this cycle of avoidance. It involves how the human brain perceives the concept of time, and more specifically, how it perceives who you are in the future. When you think about yourself right now, in this present moment, your brain lights up with deep empathy and understanding. You know you are tired. You know you are stressed. You want to protect yourself. But neuroscientists have discovered something incredibly strange about the human mind. When you picture yourself entirely in the future, even just tomorrow morning or next week, your brain stops using the neural pathways associated with yourself. It begins using the exact same pathways it uses to think about a complete stranger. On a biological level, you do not emotionally identify with the person you will be tomorrow. This creates a disastrous phenomenon. Because we view our future selves as distant strangers, we treat them with a shocking lack of empathy. We dump all of our hardest, most painful work onto their shoulders. We imagine that tomorrow me is a completely different species of human. We assume tomorrow me will wake up with the discipline of an Olympic athlete, the energy of a superhero, and an infinite capacity for tolerating boredom and frustration. We look at the painful financial spreadsheet and say, I am too tired for this today. I will let tomorrow me handle it. They will know exactly what to do. But this is a beautiful, devastating lie. Tomorrow me does not exist. Tomorrow you will wake up as the exact same person you are today. You will have the exact same fears, the exact same lack of clarity, and the exact same desire to run away. The only difference is that you will have less time, and the heavy burden you pass down the timeline will have grown even heavier with the compounded weight of guilt. To defeat procrastination, you have to fight a war on two fronts. You must change the nature of the task, and you must change your relationship with your future self. First, you have to develop a profound, almost protective empathy for the person you will be tomorrow. You have to stop treating your future self like an unpaid intern whose only job is to clean up your messes. Before you push a difficult task to another day, you must pause and genuinely ask yourself, am I setting my future self up for success? Or am I just handing a heavy bag of rocks to a friend who is already drowning? When you start treating your future self as a beloved partner rather than a stranger, the urge to sabotage them slowly begins to fade. Second, you have to negotiate with your emotional brain by removing the venom from the ugly tasks. You cannot always make a frustrating task disappear, but you can change how it feels. If a project is terrifyingly ambiguous, you do not try to finish it. You simply define the very first laughably small step. You do not write the 20-page report. You just open the document and write the title. If a task is agonizingly boring, you intentionally pair it with something delightful. You take that dreaded spreadsheet to your favorite sunlit coffee shop and buy yourself an expensive pastry that you only allow yourself to eat while looking at the numbers. You introduce artificial structure. You manufacture rewards. You gently hold your own hand and walk yourself through the discomfort. Procrastination is not a permanent character flaw. It is simply fear wearing a mask. It is the fear of boredom, the fear of failure, the fear of feeling incompetent. Once you realize that your resistance is just an emotional reflex, it loses its power over you. You stop judging yourself, you stop running away, and you finally sit still long enough to do the beautiful, difficult work you were meant to do. Chapter 5. Reclaiming time from technology. Every single day, we willingly walk into an invisible, highly sophisticated trap that has been explicitly designed by some of the most brilliant minds on the planet to capture, break, and monetize our consciousness. You know the feeling intimately. You are sitting at your desk, fully engaged in a meaningful task, when an instinctive, almost muscular urge takes over. Your hand reaches for your pocket, your thumb presses a button, and you unlock your phone. You do not have a specific purpose. You do not have an urgent message waiting. Yet, before you even realize what you are doing, you find yourself deep inside an algorithmic feed, endlessly scrolling through a chaotic stream of short videos, opinionated political takes, and idealized snapshots of vacations taken by people you barely know. Suddenly, your internal alarm goes off. You blink, shake your head, and realize 20 minutes have vanished into the digital void. Your focus is completely shattered, replaced by a strange, hollow mixture of agitation and mental fatigue. You lock the device and put it away, promising yourself you will not look at it again. But 10 minutes later, a tiny, high-pitched chime sounds from across the room. A small screen lights up, flashing a bright blue notification icon. Instantly, your brain stops whatever it was processing. Your attention shifts. The momentum you worked so hard to build is completely gone, and you must start climbing the mountain of deep focus all over any time you want to return to your work. We like to believe that we are in total control of our technology. We tell ourselves that smartphones, tablets, and high-speed internet connections are simply neutral tools that we use to enhance our efficiency and stay connected with the world. But the reality is far more sinister. The digital environment we navigate every day is not neutral. It is a hyper-optimized casino. Every notification, every infinite scroll mechanism, every colored badge, and every algorithmic recommendation has been engineered using the deep psychological principles of behavioral modification to trigger a precise, intermittent rush of dopamine in your brain. We are not merely using our devices, we are actively addicted to them. To understand why this is completely devastating to your life's potential, we must look at how the human brain processes information. When you sit down to write a piece of creative prose, build a financial model, or solve a highly technical problem, your brain requires a massive amount of cognitive runway. It takes roughly 20 minutes of continuous, undisturbed focus for your mind to fully enter a state of deep flow, that magnificent mental space where your working memory is entirely saturated with the problem at hand. Connections are made instantly and hours pass like minutes. Flow is where excellence is born, but every single time a notification flashes on your screen, or every time you pause to check a quick message, you pull your mind entirely out of that runway. Even if you only look at your phone for 3 seconds and immediately put it back down, the damage is already done. Your focus does not automatically snap back to where it was. Instead, a heavy, invisible psychological weight called attention residue clings to your mind. A part of your cognitive processing remains anchored to that text message or that social media post. Your brain is forced to burn an immense amount of metabolic energy just to clear the wreckage of the interruption and try to rebuild its momentum. If you are interrupted every 15 minutes, you never ever reach a state of flow. You spend your entire life operating in the shallow, exhausting waters of cognitive static. Consider the tragic story of a deeply talented young professional. Let us imagine an architect who dreams of designing sustainable, low-cost community housing. He has the brilliant vision, the structural knowledge, and a beautiful studio space to work in. He sits down at his drafting table on a Monday morning, ready to create. But he keeps his email tab open on his monitor, his phone resting right next to his blueprint paper, and a newsfeed humming in the background. Every few minutes, a message arrives from a client. He answers it immediately, believing he is providing excellent service. A notification pops up about a trending news story. He clicks it and reads for 5 minutes to stay informed. A friend sends a humorous video, he watches it and replies with a quick laugh. By the end of the week, he has put in 50 hours at his desk. He feels utterly fried, overwhelmed, and deeply stressed. Yet, when he looks at his blueprints, the design is uninspired, fragmented, and incomplete. He wonders why his creative genius has abandoned him. He blames his lack of talent, when the true culprit was the constant silent fracturing of his attention. He never gave his brain the uninterrupted hours required to birth something truly beautiful. The internet is an infinite candy store for the primitive mind. It offers unlimited novelty, zero friction, and instant gratification. If you rely purely on willpower to resist its pull, you will lose the battle every single time. Willpower is a finite, fragile resource that drains over the course of the day. When you are tired, hungry, or frustrated by a difficult task, your willpower drops to zero, and your hand will naturally drift toward the comfort of the screen. To reclaim your mind from technology, you must stop fighting the addiction with willpower and instead ruthlessly re-engineer your digital environment. You have to remove the friction of staying focused and introduce massive, intentional friction into the act of getting distracted. Imagine treating your attention like a sacred, ancient temple. You would never allow a loud, chaotic market to set up stalls inside a temple. You would build thick stone walls and station guards at the gates to protect the silence. You must build those exact same walls around your workday. Start by stripping your devices of their power to interrupt you. Turn off every single non-human notification on your phone and computer. If an app is not a real living person trying to reach you regarding an urgent real-world emergency, it has absolutely no right to make a sound or flash a light in your life. Reclaim the absolute authority over when you check your messages. Instead of letting email pour into your consciousness like an open, broken faucet all day long, establish strict, bounded containers for it. Check it 3 times a day, perhaps at the end of the morning, after lunch, and at the close of the workday. Treat it like a discrete task to be executed rather than a continuous state of being. Furthermore, when you are entering your biological prime time to perform your most vital, deep work, you must physically remove the temptation. Do not just close the browser tab. Disconnect your internet entirely. Put your smartphone in another room, inside a drawer, or hand it to someone else with explicit instructions not to give it back to you for 2 hours. By introducing the physical friction of having to get up, walk down the hall, and open a drawer just to check a notification, you break the unconscious, muscular reflex of distraction. You force your primitive brain to pause, allowing your rational mind to step in and say, "No, we are doing important things right now." Technology is an extraordinary servant, but it is a horrific and cruel master. When you learn to disconnect from the digital noise, you will initially feel a strange, uncomfortable wave of anxiety, a phantom urge to check your pocket, a fear that you are missing out on something vital. Lean into that discomfort. It is the feeling of your brain slowly waking up from a digital slumber. On the other side of that boredom lies an abundance of clear, deep, uninterrupted time. You will finally possess the mental space to think original thoughts, solve profound problems, and build a life of genuine substance. Chapter 6. The Art of Subtraction. We live in a culture that worships at the altar of exhaustion. We treat busyness as an absolute badge of honor, a public declaration of our own importance. If you meet an old friend for coffee and ask them how they are doing, the automatic, almost reflexive response is usually a heavy sigh, followed by the word busy. We wear our 70 and 80-hour work weeks like medals pinned to our chests. We secretly judge the colleague who leaves the office at 5 o'clock sharp, assuming they lack dedication. We have convinced ourselves that if we are not bleeding from the sheer effort of our daily grind, we do not deserve success. But this glorification of the endless grind is one of the most destructive, deeply deceptive lies of the modern working world. Working more hours does not magically produce more value, it often simply dilutes the value you are already capable of creating. To understand this, you must understand a profound, almost invisible law that governs human behavior. Work behaves exactly like a gas in a sealed chamber. It will always expand to completely fill whatever space you give it. If you give yourself a sprawling, boundaryless 12-hour day to complete a project, that project will mysteriously become incredibly complex. It will demand endless revisions. It will suddenly require you to answer 20 irrelevant emails in the middle of your thought process. It will drag on, consuming every single second of those 12 hours, leaving you utterly drained. But if you take that exact same project and you force yourself into a hard, non-negotiable boundary, if you declare that you absolutely must leave your desk in 4 hours because you have a flight to catch or a child's recital to attend, something miraculous happens. The artificial constraint forces a ruthless, brilliant clarity. When your time is suddenly scarce, you no longer have the luxury of entertaining trivialities. You stop staring out the window. You ignore the ringing phone. You stop agonizing over a font choice or a minor formatting issue. You zero in with laser precision on the absolute core of the task, and you execute it. By artificially limiting the amount of time you are allowed to work, you do not just work faster, you actually work significantly better. You strip away the fat and leave only the muscle. Think about a deeply passionate entrepreneur, someone who has poured their entire life savings into opening a beautifully designed, independent bookstore. In the beginning, they are there from dawn until midnight. They believe that their physical presence, their relentless labor, is the only thing keeping the business alive. But let us look closely at what they are actually doing during those 16 hours. They spend 2 hours lovingly arranging window displays. They spend 3 hours sweeping the floors and dusting the shelves. They spend 4 hours organizing the backroom inventory alphabetically, then reorganizing it by genre. They spend the rest of the day chatting amicably with anyone who walks through the door. At the end of the week, they are exhausted and practically bankrupt. Why? Because they spent 80 hours entirely consumed by maintenance tasks. Maintenance tasks are the silent killers of immense potential. They are the things that must be done simply to keep the lights on. Answering the phone, paying the utility bills, cleaning the physical space, managing the inbox. They are comfortable because they are easy, they provide immediate visual satisfaction, and they demand very little cognitive effort. But they move absolutely nothing forward. Our bookstore owner was so busy sweeping the floor that they never actually sat down to design the community reading program that would bring in hundreds of new customers. They were so busy dusting shelves that they never negotiated better wholesale rates with their suppliers. They drowned themselves in the shallow waters of maintenance, leaving no time, energy, or attention for the deep, terrifying work of actual growth. To break free from this trap, you must master the incredibly difficult, highly unnatural art of subtraction. You have to stop looking at your schedule and asking what else you can fit in. You must look at your schedule and ask what you can ruthlessly cut out. The first step in this process is shrinking the maintenance. You cannot simply ignore your emails or stop paying your bills. Your life would collapse into chaos, but you can strictly contain them. You must put these low-value tasks into a tightly sealed box and refuse to let them leak into the rest of your day. Instead of checking your messages 80 times a day, you batch them. You dedicate one strict 30-minute window at noon and another at the end of the day. You attack the maintenance tasks aggressively, moving through them with the sole intention of getting them out of your way so you can return to the work that actually matters. You do not treat maintenance as the main event. You treat it as the necessary tax you pay to access your real potential. But shrinking is only the beginning. The ultimate expression of productivity is the absolute courage to remove things entirely. Every time you say yes to a new obligation, a new project, or a new social engagement, you are simultaneously saying a silent, invisible no to something else. You are trading away a piece of your finite energy and time. Often, we say yes purely out of guilt or out of a desperate desire to be perceived as helpful and agreeable. We join committees we do not care about. We agree to review proposals that have nothing to do with our core goals. We slowly suffocate our own ambitions under a mountain of other people's priorities. You must learn to look at the sprawling mess of your commitments and start firing yourself from the jobs that do not serve your ultimate vision. This requires sitting in the profound discomfort of letting people down. It means looking a colleague in the eye and saying, "I cannot take this on right now." It means letting some of the smaller, less important fires in your life burn out on their own because you are busy building a house that will last for generations. When you remove the excess, something incredibly beautiful emerges in its place. Empty space. We are terrified of empty space. When we see a blank hour on our calendar, our immediate instinct is to cram something into it. But empty space is not a vacuum waiting to be filled with noise. It is the breathing room your brain desperately requires to synthesize complex ideas. It is the quiet soil from which your most profound, original thoughts will grow. By enforcing strict limits on your working hours, aggressively shrinking the time you spend on maintenance, and having the sheer audacity to say no to the unimportant, you stop being a frantic participant in the cult of busyness. You become a deliberate architect of your own impact. You realize that true power does not lie in how much you can accumulate on your plate. It lies in your masterful, unyielding control over exactly what you allow onto that plate in the first place. Chapter 7. Designing a Quiet Mind. There is an invisible, crushing weight that almost all of us carry through our days, yet we rarely acknowledge it because we cannot see it. It is not the physical weight of exhaustion, nor is it the external pressure of demanding bosses or looming deadlines. It is an entirely internal burden. It is the constant, low-grade, vibrating hum of 1,000 uncompleted tasks, stray thoughts, half-formed anxieties, and floating obligations echoing around inside your skull. It is the sudden, jarring realization in the middle of a critical meeting that you forgot to buy groceries. It is the cold sweat that wakes you up at 3 a.m. because you cannot remember if you paid the electric bill. It is a mind that feels completely saturated, tightly wound, and perpetually on the verge of dropping something vital. This agonizing state of mental clutter is the direct result of a profound misunderstanding of human biology. We have forgotten what the brain is actually built to do. Your mind is a magnificent, unparalleled instrument for generating brilliant ideas, synthesizing complex emotions, and solving intricate problems. Yes, it is an engine of creation, but it is an absolutely terrible filing cabinet. When you try to use your highly evolved creative brain as a simple storage device for your daily to-do list, you are effectively using a supercomputer to prop open a door. It is a catastrophic waste of resources. Every single time you tell yourself, "I need to remember to call my mother," or "I must not forget to format that report," and you do not physically write it down, you create an open, unresolved loop in your subconscious. Your brain, desperate to protect you from failing, will keep that loop running in the background. It will continuously ping your conscious mind over and over again, draining your cognitive battery and completely shattering your ability to focus on the present moment. Consider a deeply committed, highly capable leader, perhaps a director of a non-profit organization who handles massive, high-stakes logistics with absolute grace. At work, she is a visionary. She manages dozens of volunteers, orchestrates complex fundraising galas, and never misses a professional beat. But her internal landscape is a chaotic, exhausting mess. Because she relies entirely on her memory to juggle her personal life, she is constantly dropping the ball. She misses dental appointments. She forgets to reply to her closest friends. She sits down in the evening to finally read a book, but she cannot absorb a single paragraph because her mind is frantically reviewing everything she might have forgotten to do that day. She assumes she is losing her edge, or that she is simply overwhelmed by the volume of her life. But the volume is not the enemy. The enemy is where she is choosing to store it. To achieve any level of profound productivity or genuine peace, you must ruthlessly evict every single obligation from your head. You must master the deeply liberating practice of externalization. Imagine sitting down at a completely clear desk with nothing but a blank notebook and a pen. You close your eyes, take a deep breath, and you simply begin to pour your mind onto the paper. You write down the massive, terrifying projects that are looming over your career, but you also write down the ridiculously trivial things. The fact that you need to buy a new brand of toothpaste. The email you need to send to your accountant, the squeaky hinge on the front door that needs fixing. You do not filter, you do not judge, you do not organize the list. You just dig into every corner of your consciousness and drag every lingering thought out into the physical world. You keep writing until your mind is completely, beautifully empty. The psychological relief of this process is immediate and staggering. The moment a task is captured on paper, a secure, external system, your brain finally exhales. It realizes it no longer has to burn precious energy, keeping that item alive. It trusts the paper. The background hum of anxiety abruptly stops, replaced by a profound, echoing silence. Your mental RAM is entirely cleared, and suddenly you have the full, devastating power of your intellect available to focus on whatever is directly in front of you. But emptying your mind is only the first phase of this architectural process. Once you have cleared the brush, you must rise above the landscape. When your mind is constantly cluttered, you are trapped in a reactionary posture. You are wandering through a dense, overgrown forest, furiously hacking away at whatever branch swings into your face. You can only see what is immediately in front of you. But once your mind is quiet, you have the ability to step into a helicopter and rise 1,000 feet into the air. From this high-altitude perspective, you can finally see the entire map of your existence. Human life is not a single linear track. It is a complex ecosystem made up of distinct, interconnected domains. You have your physical health, your mental well-being, your intimate relationships, your career, your finances, and your personal growth. From the ground level, it is impossible to evaluate the health of this ecosystem. You might be fiercely proud of how hard you are working, completely blind to the fact that your marriage is slowly starving for your attention, or that your physical health is deteriorating. By taking your quiet mind and intentionally reviewing these core domains from a high level, you regain the power of deliberate navigation. You can look objectively at the map and say, my career is thriving, but my health requires immediate intervention. You stop letting the loudest, most urgent demands dictate your life, and you begin actively directing your energy toward the areas that require structural support. You transition from surviving your life to beautifully designing it. And then, when the mental clutter is externalized and the high-level direction of your life is clear, you unlock the ultimate, most powerful state of the human mind: intentional wandering. In our frantic, hyper-optimized modern world, we have deeply pathologized a wandering mind. We have been conditioned to believe that if we are not actively focused on a specific, measurable task, we are being lazy. We think staring out a window is a sin. So, the moment our work is done, we immediately plug our brains into a podcast, or a television show, or a social media feed. We refuse to let our minds simply exist in empty space. But empty space is where genius lives. When you deliberately step away from your work, leave your phone behind, and go for a long, quiet walk with absolutely no goal and no input, something miraculous happens in your subconscious. Your quiet, unstructured mind begins to sift through all the dense information you have been absorbing. It begins to effortlessly connect seemingly unrelated dots. It solves the massive, complex problems that your conscious, strained mind could not untangle. The most brilliant, paradigm-shifting ideas rarely arrive when you are staring aggressively at a computer monitor. They arrive in the shower, on a quiet drive, or while you are simply watching the rain. A quiet mind is not an empty, useless void. It is a deeply fertile soil. When you free your brain from the exhausting, miserable labor of holding on to tasks, you finally allow it to do what it was born to do. You allow it to dream, to connect, and to beautifully orchestrate the masterpiece of your life. Chapter 8. Building the Attention Muscle. There is a dangerous, incredibly seductive lie that the modern professional world has fully embraced, and it is quietly destroying our capacity for actual greatness. We wear it as a badge of honor, we boast about it in job interviews. We believe that to survive the sheer velocity of the modern age, we must master it. It is the myth of multitasking. We have somehow convinced ourselves that the human mind is analogous to a computer processor, capable of running multiple complex programs simultaneously without any loss in performance. But human biology tells a starkly different, uncompromising story. The brain is physiologically incapable of paying deep conscious attention to two demanding tasks at the exact same time. When you believe you are multitasking, you are actually engaging in rapid task switching. You are violently yanking your spotlight of attention back and forth between different points of focus. And every single time you make that switch, you pay a heavy, invisible cognitive tax. Imagine a highly capable project director navigating a typical Wednesday morning. They are sitting in their office, dialed into a mandatory hour-long virtual strategy meeting. Because they feel the relentless pressure to be productive, they decide to use this time to also draft a delicate, high-stakes email to an unhappy client. To the outside observer, they look incredibly efficient. But let us look at what is actually happening inside their mind. They type a sentence of the email, focusing entirely on the careful choice of words. Suddenly, they hear their name mentioned on the conference call. Their brain drops the context of the email, scrambles to retrieve the context of the meeting, and formulates a response. Once they speak, they drag their attention back to the email. But the attention does not return smoothly. A heavy residue of the meeting lingers in their working memory. They have to reread the previous 3 sentences just to remember their train of thought. They type another line. Then their phone vibrates on the desk. A text from their spouse about dinner. They glance at it, process the domestic question, put the phone down, and pull their mind back to the angry client. By the time the hour is over, the meeting has concluded, and the email is sent. The director feels a surge of accomplishment. Yet, the reality is disastrous. Because their attention was aggressively fractured, they completely missed the subtle, unsaid tension in their colleague's voice during the meeting. A tension that will erupt into a major crisis next week. And the email they sent? It lacks the necessary empathy and nuance, ultimately worsening the relationship with the client. Furthermore, the sheer metabolic energy required to frantically switch contexts dozens of times in 1 hour has left the director mentally hollowed out. By early afternoon, they are exhausted, irritable, and completely incapable of doing any deep, meaningful work. They sacrificed excellence on the altar of busyness. To step out of this chaotic, exhausting cycle, you must embrace a practice that feels entirely unnatural in the modern world: deliberate single-tasking. Single-tasking is the radical act of choosing one objective, bringing your entire, undivided consciousness to it, and refusing to look away until it is complete or until a predetermined block of time has elapsed. When you first attempt this, it will feel intensely uncomfortable. If you sit down with a blank document and pledge to do nothing but write for 45 minutes, your brain will practically scream for an escape route. Without the comforting, chaotic noise of multiple open tabs and incoming notifications, you are forced to directly confront the difficulty, the ambiguity, and the silence of the work itself. You will feel a powerful, muscular urge to distract yourself. But if you sit in that discomfort, if you refuse to switch tasks, something magnificent happens. You sink into the work. The friction dissolves. Your cognitive resources, no longer fragmented, combine into a piercing, laser-like focus. You begin to operate with a level of speed, clarity, and brilliance that multitasking could never, ever produce. However, telling someone to simply focus on one thing is like telling someone to simply lift a heavy boulder. If they do not have the physical strength, the instruction is useless. Attention is not merely a decision, it is a mental muscle. And for the vast majority of us living in a hyper-distracted world, that muscle has severely atrophied. It has grown weak from years of being coddled by 10-second videos and endless scrolling feeds. Before you can rely on your attention to carry the weight of your biggest ambitions, you must actively train it. This brings us to one of the most misunderstood, profoundly powerful tools in the realm of human performance: mindfulness and meditation. For many, the word meditation conjures images of burning incense, mystical chanting, and an elusive quest for spiritual enlightenment. While it can certainly be those things in the context of pure, high-level productivity, meditation is something entirely different. It is raw, intense, cognitive resistance training. It is the gymnasium for your mind. Picture the physical act of meditating. You sit in a chair, close your eyes, and assign your brain one single, ridiculously simple task. Pay attention to the physical sensation of your own breathing. For the first 5 seconds, it feels peaceful. On the 6th second, your untrained mind violently rebels against the boredom. It throws a forgotten argument from 3 years ago into your consciousness. It reminds you of an unpaid parking ticket. It starts planning what you will eat for dinner. It desperately seeks any form of stimulation. The untrained individual will become frustrated, believing they have failed at meditating because their mind wandered. But the wandering is not a failure. It is the entire point of the exercise. The true magic happens in the exact moment you realize your attention has drifted away from your breath. In that split second of self-awareness, you make a deliberate choice to detach from the distracting thought and gently, firmly pull your attention back to the breath. That physical act of pulling your focus back is the equivalent of doing a bicep curl for your brain. Every time your mind wanders and every time you drag it back, you complete one repetition. When you practice this daily, even for just 10 or 15 minutes, you are structurally rewiring your brain. You are increasing the density of the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for focus, emotional regulation, and decision-making. You are teaching your mind how to observe a distraction, whether it is an internal anxious thought or an external ringing phone, without automatically reacting to it. You are building an impenetrable fortress around your attention. Imagine how this transforms your daily life. You sit down to write that critical business proposal. After 10 minutes, the urge to check the news arises. But because you have trained your attention muscle, you do not unconsciously open a browser tab. You notice the urge, you acknowledge it, and you consciously redirect your focus back to the proposal. You remain in control. You are no longer a passive victim of your own impulses or the world's demands. Building your attention muscle is the ultimate competitive advantage. While the rest of the world fractures its intellect into 1,000 meaningless pieces, drowning in the shallow waters of multitasking, you will possess the quiet, terrifying power of absolute focus. You will wield your attention like a surgical instrument, cutting through complexity and creating work of profound depth. But this towering mental clarity cannot exist in a vacuum. The mind is inextricably linked to the machine that carries it, and to sustain this level of elite cognitive performance, we must turn our focus toward optimizing the biological engine itself. Chapter 9. Optimizing the human machine. There is a profound, deeply arrogant illusion that permeates the modern working world. We have somehow convinced ourselves that our minds and our bodies are completely separate entities. We treat our brains as if they are ethereal, magical computers floating entirely disconnected from our physical forms. When we sit down to accomplish something difficult, to write, to code, to manage a team, to build a future, we rely purely on our intellect and our willpower, completely ignoring the fragile flesh and blood vessel that actually houses that intellect. We feed our bodies absolute garbage. We deprive them of water. We force them to sit completely motionless in ergonomically disastrous chairs for 10 hours a day, and we starve them of restorative sleep. And then, when our minds inevitably rebel, when we experience brain fog, exhaustion, irritability, and a total inability to focus, we are completely shocked. We blame our lack of discipline. We blame our lack of motivation. We fail to realize a stark, uncompromising biological reality. You cannot outthink a poorly maintained machine. Your brain is not a magical cloud storage drive. It is a wet, heavy, incredibly demanding physical organ. Although it accounts for only about 2% of your total body weight, it consumes roughly 20% of your daily energy. It requires a massive, continuous, uninterrupted supply of glucose, oxygen and hydration simply to maintain basic consciousness, let alone perform elite-level cognitive work. If you want to experience profound productivity, you have to stop managing your mind in isolation and start violently protecting the physical machine that generates your thoughts. This transformation begins with how you approach the literal fuel you put into your engine. In our hurried culture, we have completely forgotten the purpose of food. We eat purely for entertainment, for emotional comfort, or for absolute convenience. We grab highly processed, sugar-laden meals in a frantic rush between meetings. We treat food as a temporary fix to stop our stomachs from growling, rather than a strategic asset designed to sustain long-term focus. Consider the tragedy of the mid-afternoon crash. Imagine a brilliant negotiator preparing for a tense 3-hour boardroom discussion that begins at 2 in the afternoon. At lunch, seeking comfort from the stress, they eat a massive plate of refined carbohydrates, perhaps a heavy pasta dish or a massive sandwich. The moment they finish eating, their blood sugar violently spikes. For about 30 minutes, they feel a rush of artificial energy. But as they walk into the boardroom, their pancreas floods their system with insulin to clear the sugar. Their blood sugar crashes, plummeting far below baseline. The biological urge to sleep suddenly overrides every other function in their body. Their eyelids grow heavy. Their executive function, their charm, their quick wit, everything they needed to win the negotiation completely evaporates. They did not fail because they lacked skill. They failed because they accidentally drugged themselves with the wrong fuel. To optimize your human machine, you must begin to view food through the lens of cognitive endurance. You want to consume meals that provide a slow, steady, continuous burn of energy, rather than violent spikes and devastating crashes. When you prioritize whole, unprocessed foods, complex proteins, and healthy fats, you are essentially feeding your brain a steady drip of high-quality fuel that will sustain your focus for hours without the devastating afternoon crash. But fuel is completely useless without the medium required to transport it. This brings us to the most simple, yet most universally neglected element of biological productivity: water. Your brain is composed of nearly 75% water. Every single electrical impulse that fires across your synapses, every thought, every memory, every brilliant deduction relies on a delicate balance of hydration. Even a microscopic drop in hydration levels, as little as 1 or 2%, causes a profound, immediate decline in cognitive processing speed, short-term memory, and emotional regulation. Yet the vast majority of ambitious people spend their entire days chronically dehydrated. They wake up and immediately drink coffee, a diuretic that further dehydrates their cells. They work for hours, ignoring their thirst, confusing the physical sensation of dehydration with hunger or fatigue. When you feel that slow, creeping fog rolling into your mind around 2 in the afternoon, before you reach for a third cup of coffee that will only fry your nervous system, drink a massive glass of water, you will be astonished to find that your brain was not tired. It was simply parched. Water is the absolute cheapest, most immediate, and most powerful productivity supplement on the planet. Fuel and hydration, however, must be circulated. The human body was not designed to sit folded in a chair for 10 consecutive hours. We evolved to move. When you sit completely still for hours on end, your blood pools, your heart rate drops, and the delivery of oxygen to your brain slows to an absolute crawl. It is the biological equivalent of letting a beautiful, high-performance sports car sit idling in a garage for years until the engine seizes up. We often view physical exercise as a vanity project, something we do solely to change the shape of our bodies or impress others. But in the realm of high-level performance, movement is not about your waistline, it is about your brain. Exercise is a profound cognitive reset. When you are staring at a difficult problem, completely paralyzed by frustration, you cannot simply think your way out of the mental trap. You must change your physical state to change your mental state. Getting up from your desk and taking a brisk 20-minute walk outside physically alters the chemical composition of your brain. The elevated heart rate pumps fresh, oxygen-rich blood into your prefrontal cortex. It flushes out the toxic buildup of cortisol, the stress hormone that literally shrinks your brain's capacity to learn. It stimulates the release of endorphins and actually promotes the growth of entirely new neural pathways. You do not exercise to take a break from your work. You exercise to radically improve the quality of the mind that returns to the work. Yet all the perfect food, meticulous hydration, and rigorous exercise in the world will amount to absolutely nothing if you neglect the absolute foundation of human biology. We must talk about sleep. For decades, hustle culture has relentlessly glorified sleep deprivation. We have treated the refusal to sleep as the ultimate proof of our dedication. We proudly declare, "I will sleep when I am dead," completely blind to the fact that operating on 4 hours of sleep guarantees that we will live our waking hours as a fraction of the person we are capable of being. When you sacrifice sleep to squeeze in a few more hours of mediocre work, you are taking out a high-interest loan against your future cognitive capacity, and the debt will always be collected. Sleep is not a passive state of doing nothing. It is a wildly active, intensely busy, incredibly critical biological process. While you're unconscious, your brain is furiously sweeping away the toxic metabolic waste that accumulated during the day. It is solidifying the memories of everything you learned. It is making profound, creative connections that your conscious mind could never see. It is repairing your emotional resilience. When you deliberately cut your sleep short, you interrupt all of this necessary maintenance. You wake up with a brain that is literally swimming in metabolic garbage. Your emotional regulation is shattered, meaning every minor inconvenience feels like a catastrophic crisis. Your ability to focus is destroyed, making a 1-hour task stretch into a miserable 3-hour ordeal. You traded the ultimate force multiplier of a fully rested, brilliant mind for a few extra hours of exhausted, resentful struggling. True, enduring productivity requires you to bow down to your own biology. It requires the profound humility to admit that you are an animal, and like all animals, you have physical limits. When you finally stop fighting your body, when you feed it properly, hydrate it constantly, move it aggressively, and rest it deeply, you stop dragging a heavy, broken machine through your life. You step into a body that feels light, powerful, and ready to unleash your true potential upon the world. Saldato in Jitam was. Chapter 10. Mastery and the Lifelong Practice. If you have absorbed the philosophies we have explored, you are likely feeling a powerful, intoxicating surge of motivation. You can finally see the architecture of a different kind of life. You are ready to ruthlessly prioritize your days, protect your biological prime time, build impenetrable walls around your attention, and honor the physical machine that carries your mind. You want to wake up tomorrow morning? Implement every single strategy with absolute, flawless precision, and completely transform your reality by sunset. But before you step out into the world to execute this vision, we must confront the final, most dangerous trap that ensnares ambitious people. It is the deeply held, entirely false belief that productivity is a final destination, a magical, perfectly organized mountaintop where you will finally arrive, plant your flag, and never struggle again. We desperately want to believe that if we just find the perfect morning routine, the perfect notebook, or the perfect time-blocking system, we will permanently cross a finish line into a state of unwavering focus. But human life is entirely too messy, too unpredictable, and too beautifully complex for any rigid system to hold it perfectly forever. Imagine a deeply dedicated middle school teacher who discovers these principles. She loves her students, but the endless grading, parent emails, and lesson planning have burned her down to a hollow shell. She decides to take her life back. She identifies her biological prime time. She deletes the addictive apps from her phone. She begins writing down her 3 vital intentions every single morning. For the first week, she is an absolute force of nature. She leaves work at 5 o'clock for the first time in years. She feels like she has unlocked a superpower. But Then, the second week arrives, and reality violently intervenes. On Tuesday morning, a pipe bursts in her classroom, flooding the floor and destroying a week's worth of materials. On Wednesday, a student goes through a severe emotional crisis that demands 4 unplanned hours of deep, empathetic counseling. By Thursday evening, she is utterly exhausted. She has not completed a single one of her 3 vital daily tasks, and her beautifully color-coded calendar is a meaningless joke. In that moment of exhaustion, a familiar, cruel voice whispers in her mind. It tells her that she has failed. It tells her that she lacks discipline, that the system is broken, and that she might as well give up and go back to drowning in the chaos. This is the exact moment where the amateur quits, but it is the exact moment where the master truly begins. Mastery in productivity, or in any meaningful human endeavor, is not defined by your ability to execute a perfect day. A perfect day requires no resilience. True mastery is entirely defined by how you handle the days that completely fall apart. It is about your capacity for profound, radical self-compassion. When we hold ourselves to a standard of machine-like perfection, we become fragile. The moment a single piece of our schedule breaks, we abandon the entire structure. But when you treat your productivity as a lifelong, breathing practice, you develop an unbreakable resilience. You realize that the teacher in our story did not fail. She simply encountered the unpredictable nature of human existence. The goal is not to prevent the storm from hitting your schedule. The goal is to realize that when the storm inevitably hits, you know exactly how to gently steer the ship back on course the next morning without punishing yourself for getting blown off track. Self-compassion is not a weakness. It is not an excuse to be lazy or to abandon your goals. It is the ultimate tool for rapid recovery. When you aggressively berate yourself for procrastinating or for losing an hour to an internet rabbit hole, you flood your body with stress hormones. You make yourself feel terrible. And what do humans do when they feel terrible? They seek immediate comfort, which usually leads straight back to the very distractions that derailed them in the first place. But when you look at your failure, take a deep breath and say, I am a human being. I slipped up, and that is entirely okay. You instantly cut the emotional weight of the failure. You reset the board. You are ready to try again. This brings us to the profound realization that ties everything together. The ultimate purpose of mastering your time, attention, and energy is not simply to become a highly efficient machine that churns out more labor for the world to consume. If you use these strategies merely to cram 20 hours of work into 10 hours so that you can instantly take on 10 more hours of work, you have completely missed the point. You have just built a faster, more efficient hamster wheel. The true, beautiful purpose of all this effort is to create space. It is to execute the necessary obligations of your life with such deliberate, quiet excellence that you actually have the freedom to step away from them. It is about creating the mental runway to look deeply into the eyes of the people you love without your mind wandering back to an unanswered email. It is about having the physical energy to pursue a passion that pays you absolutely nothing, simply because it makes your soul sing. It is about being able to sit quietly on a park bench on a Tuesday afternoon, doing absolutely nothing and feeling zero guilt about it. Productivity is the deliberate, ongoing act of aligning your daily actions with your deepest values. It will never be perfect. You will still have days where you feel overwhelmed. You will still occasionally fall prey to distraction. You will still sometimes stay up too late and eat the wrong food. But the difference is that you are no longer a victim of the chaos. You are the architect of your return. You now possess the tools to quiet the noise. You know how to identify the vital few among the trivial many. You know how to protect your energy and how to fiercely defend your attention. You know that you are not a machine, but a living, breathing human being capable of extraordinary things when given the right environment. The journey does not end here. It begins anew every single morning when you open your eyes. Take a deep breath. Look at the messy, beautiful canvas of your life. Pick up the brush, decide what actually matters to you today, and begin to paint.